remember we talked about the mighty blue angels, the blue eagles angels from Sirius. And you remember how George Washington, in his final battle, was kneeling and praying unto God that he would be able to meet the challenge. And the mighty blue eagle band of angels from Sirius heard the prayer, and they came and they put themselves among the soldiers and beside him, and they won the battle. If you remember, I talked about our own angels that are assigned to us. And if you remember, I also talked about how many of the masters have given us part of their bands of angels. In fact, we have available to us between 40 and 50. So why do we talk again about angels? So when I asked El Morya this, he gave me a picture. Here was a huge room. It was filled with money. Just all kinds of money. He said, this is what you have available to you, all of this money. But you are only asking for a little change. And you are praying for this little change when you have all of this available to you to do the work that you are sent there to do. I said, oh, it's a matter of consciousness then. We have so much that we can call forth right now in this time. For this is a very crucial moment in our Earth's history, in the history of the United States, and so on. Everything is building up to a tremendous problem. And you need to know what you have to draw from. So, today I want to talk about another band of angels that we have to call upon. You begin to see, here were all the seraphim, here are all the blue angels. These are bands of angels, thousands upon thousands. And then we have the Cosmic Secret Service. Now, what about Cosmic Secret Service? Where do we get this, and how do we tune in to this kind of thing? This is what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about the leader specifically, who is K-17. This is a code name. And I'm going to be drawing from a book that is called The Masters and Their Retreats, in which it was written the different background of all of the masters. And K-17 is certainly one of them. You know, it makes a big difference how you look upon life. If you look upon life from a human point of reference, we could be in big trouble today. Coming up, what's ahead of us. But if we look at ourselves as part of a band of angels, and we have all of these armies behind us, and I've given you several illustrations of how this actually can work. I mentioned, I think, either the last sermon or before, the illustration of how when the armies of the West came on to the beaches of Normandy, I think it was. The enemy, the Germans, were putting all of their armaments onto this hillside, not against our people who were moving onto the beaches. And when they asked some of the prisoners, what was this all about? They said there was a huge band of mounted white horses coming over there, and we were shooting at them because we could see them. When you see this, you begin to say, oh, okay, so how do I tune into this? And this is what we want to work with today. I want to introduce you now to K17, the head of the Cosmic Service. And I would just like to read from this book. K17 is the code name for the Ascended Master who heads the Cosmic Secret Service. Its members are devotees of the all-seeing eye of God. They use their God vision to warn the citizens of Cosmos of threats to the security of the individualization of the God flame. That's you and I. Threats to life and liberty, threats to the governments of the world, and to the family as the basic unit, the family as the basic unit of the Aquarian society. The members of the Secret Service are the guardians of the destiny of liberty in America and in every nation upon earth. Because of the nature of their service, K17 and his co-workers are very close to the physical octave. They often appear in physical form as the guardians of light action, the guardians of right action midst chaos and crises, as they assist members of the various security agencies of the nations of the world. Sometimes they actually work under cover, assuming the appearance of those whose ranks and organizations they would penetrate. K17 explains that his legions have dedicated themselves to be those members of hierarchy who are the closest to the physical octave and its physical vibration. It has been said of me that I make more physical appearances in the halls of government and among the leaders of nations than any other ascended master. This is because the dispensations of the legions of the Cosmic Service work so close to mankind that they actually feel tangibly our presence, and thus in times of danger their fears are allayed because they feel the presence of that heavenly help that is always forthcoming when there is dedication to the honor flame. Now this is very important. We have to begin to see who we are, and we have to begin to understand how to manifest the honor flame, etc. K17 employs a protective force field known as a ring pass knot. Now, I want to say to you that these techniques that he shares will make the big difference between you and I in the next years or so. We need to be adepts, being able to use these divine abilities to protect us ahead of us. He said this K17 employs a protective force field known as the ring pass knot, which is actually a ring of white fire that may be tinged with the colors of the rays according to the requirements of the hour. He draws this circle of living flame around individuals and places to protect and to seal identity and force field of those dedicated in the service of the light. So if you were in a situation where you were subject to receiving energies, can be positive, negative, whatever, you can call upon this ring pass knot, and he will come and his legions and surround you with this ring pass knot. He will talk more about this as we go through this, but this is a very necessary technique or prayer, or however you want to say it, that we have at our disposal, and we need to learn as individuals how to use it in everyday life. Both K-17 and his sister were able to maintain life in their physical bodies for over 300 years prior to their ascensions in the 1930s. Now, that's about my time. It's when I was born, in the 30s. And so when you see this, you say, well, it used to be that people could live hundreds of years. Well, maybe it's still available if you know how to do it. And this master lived 300 years in the physical body, and his sister as well, before they ascended in the 30s. He said, continuing their evolution and service to embodied mankind, they now maintain a villa in Paris and focuses in other parts of the world for the training of unascended chelas. Keep that in mind, because you can call upon him and go there during your sleep and learn the teachings that he can share with you. He said, K-17 frequently visits the executive offices of the United States government in a physical body and works closely with members of the FBI. He is equally familiar with the Kremlin, although they are not aware of his true identity. In 1973, K-17 describes the work of his legions and how we can help them. He said, my legions are agents of the cosmic Christ, and they are ever on the alert to search out those manifestations that are subversive against the Christ and the unfolding Buddhic consciousness in mankind. My legions have computers recording all types of information on all types of people, for we must be ready as we serve with the keepers of the scrolls to provide any ascended master at any time with what you would call a dossier on a live stream. The ascended masters use this information to determine a person's aptitude for a specific job that they would like to assign him. We do have openings, he says, in our ranks for those who would participate. And this is an invitation to you and I to join his forces if we would like. Let me do that last one again. We do have openings in our ranks for those who would participate by the use of the all-seeing eye of God and the help of Cyclopeia in calling to the attention of hierarchy the persons and conditions, the organizations and happenings that are not in keeping with the law, that are a threat to the advancement of the light upon the planet. You know that God is omniscient, but God's omniscience is manifest through his awareness of himself in man. God's omniscience is the awareness of himself in man. That's in you and I. God uses your hands and feet. He also uses your eyes. And thus it is not out of order for those in embodiment to call to the attention of hierarchy conditions that are in the making and on the drawing boards that require the seal of white fire, the ring pass not. Now, if you are watching the news, if you are aware of what is happening in our societies today, you need to understand your role in bringing this to the forefront in consciousness and giving it to the ascended masters to take on up further. This is our role, and this we need to become conscious of. He said, I desire also to acquaint you with the fact that in your service with the legions of K17, you may don the cloak of invisibility. Invisibility. The cloak of invisibility is a force field that can actually render you invisible as you walk in dangerous passages and along the highways in the service of the Brotherhood. But I ask you to remember, when you desire to be seen, to request that of your Christ self that the cloak of invisibility be removed. Because if you don't, nobody will know you're around. And he refers to an experience with the messengers from a little later. He said, there is a definite times when you will learn from my legions when it is important to walk the earth incognito, when you realize you are in the camp of the enemy, and you are there to gather information and to learn what you can learn for the sake of the light, that you remain in the folds of the cloak of invisibility, and your very conscience and soul tells you that silence is golden, that discretion is the better part of valor. There are many in embodiment who serve with the Cosmic Secret Service. This is because many ascended masters who serve on the councils of the Great White Brotherhood have not been embodied recently. Once they ascend, they are no longer in touch with the world situation and contemporary society in the same measure that they were when they were embodied on Earth. While they possess the power of tuning in to mankind, they don't spend any more of their energy than necessary to accomplish their service. The unascended branch of the Cosmic Secret Service assembles information on specific cases, writes reports on world situations, and offers opinion as to what should be done about certain matters. The reports of the various agents are put together and examined. The masters compare their own views with the suggestions of the unascended agents, which are you and I. In most cases, they pass on the results in concise form to the Karmic Board. The final actions of the Brotherhood are based then, to some degree, on the intelligence gathered by those in embodiment. In 1977, Lanello revealed that he had worked with K17 for many centuries prior to his ascension. These two masters continued to work together, and in the 1996, they delivered a report on the world scene requesting that the students give calls to Cyclopeia to expose and prevent attacks on the nations of America. K17 and the legions in his command should be called upon to expose by the power of the all-seeing eye those forces and plots that would undermine Saint Germain's plan for God government in the Golden Age. His flame is teal green and white. He is often referred to simply as friend. So goes the understanding of who this being is that we call K17. And he will talk more about this in the study we're going to now move into. But before we do, I would like to tune a little bit to the angels. Now, how do you do this? We could sing the song that I've announced that we will be singing, but I don't feel I want to go there. Instead, just note the feelings within yourself when you sing, Holy, Holy, Holy. Notice immediately the moment you sing this and you bring your energies to the third eye chakra and you see the angels, you work with the angels and so on. As you begin to do this, your whole energies move upward and the tuning can happen very, very quickly. So let us now visualize angels and let us sing with the angels. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, thou art holy in manifestation in man. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, thou art holy in manifestation in man. Notice how your energies immediately move up and we begin to really feel that sense of oneness with the Father and with the angels. Do so day after day. You will see He's really asking us to do this in order for us to be able to be not only used by hierarchy, but us to be able to call forth tremendous amounts of angels to work with us. And so He gave a dictation in 1974, I think it was, in which He said, when you call me K17, do not think that you are addressing a number or a numberless being, for I am, and I have a God identity, and I am in the service of Saint Germain. And I use the code name K17, but that is not my real name, for that is the name that is given to me in my office as the head of the Cosmic Secret Service. You see, if we knew his name, or if the negative forces knew his name, they can get through to him. But K17, whoever is K17, this is the code name, they call it. He said, indeed, my legions have worked to gather you together here under one roof. And this was in this conference in which he spoke. And they have determined not to leave you. For my legions are angels of the cosmic Christ, and they are ever on the alert to search out those manifestations that are subversive against the Christ and the unfolding Buddhi consciousness in mankind. Thus they work with honest hearts, honest souls, law enforcement agencies, and all in embodiment who espouse honor and who defend the consciousness of the Christ and the law of the Father. Now, if you're reading the news, you found out this a few days ago that the federal court has said that 2 Christian schools that were playing football could not pray. They could not pray. They could lecture, they could talk, but they could not pray to the Christ before the games. Now, what was my reaction? Immediately I went into meditation and reported this. This is what we're here to actually work with in this kind of a situation. My legions, he says, are determined to rescue that number of 10,000 who ought to be solidly bound together in this organization for the fruition of the teachings the true teachings of the Christ. Therefore, my legions shall accompany each one of you who invites them to do so on a search and scanning of this nation, north, south, east, and west, for all who should be drawn in by the very magnet of your heart and your heart's tie to the great central sun magnet, to this cause, to this service. So we should be actually seeing ourselves as part of this cosmic secret service. Now, the moment you start seeing yourself as part of this great movement, you see life from a completely different point of reference. Instead of being under the problems around us, we see ourselves as above the problems. And we can call forth tremendous amounts of help if we understand what he's talking about here. He said, when my legions work with you, do not be surprised if they attempt to enlist you and to convince you that it is quite the thing to be among the legions of K-17, and that there are many opportunities for advancement in such employment. Now that's the you can be employed by the Secret Service. Not the human Secret Service, but the heavenly Secret Service. You can be employed by them, and you can rise in the potential of leadership in it. See, for they are most zealous in the cause of ferreting out the dark ones, and there is a certain enjoyment, a certain reward that these angels working with ascended beings, and some among you who have already joined forces with them at etheric levels of your bodies, while your bodies sleep, hold dear. You know, precious hearts, that there is something in the sleuth in all mankind. Who doesn't enjoy the detective story or the triumph in small ways and great of good over evil? And so, to participate in the capture of a criminal at large, to bring him before the judgment of the high court, this is certain excitement. Now we do have in our legions computers recording all types of information on all types of people, for we must be ready as we serve with the keepers of the scrolls to provide any ascended hierarch at any time with almost what you would call a dossier on the live stream to determine his aptitudes for a specific job which a hierarchy would like to bestow upon him. When I just read what I just read a little bit ago, that reported the same thing, that information came from this dictation. And so the gathering of information is the gathering of records of the causal body, records of the electronic belt. Some of you have seen the perversion of this information gathering in police state tactics that have occurred in this century. These are definite and deliberate perversions by the false hierarchy of my legions, who work only to expound upon and expand the Christ teachings for all. Thus I say that we do have openings in our ranks for those who would participate. By the use of the all-seeing eye of God with the help of Cyclopeia, in calling to the attention of hierarchy, persons and conditions, organizations and happenings that are not in keeping with the law and that are a threat to the advancement of the light upon the planet. You know that God is omniscient, that God's omniscience is manifested through his awareness of himself in man. God uses your hands and feet. He uses also your eyes, and thus it is not out of order that those in embodiment to call to the the attention of hierarchy, conditions that are in the making and on the drawing boards which require the seal of white fire, the ring pass not. And so every day in my decrees, I do just this. I call for the ring pass not around certain things. The protection of the president, the advancement of the evil, etc. As we look at the whole scene, you can actually do this in your prayers and in your decree sessions. He said, I desire also to acquaint you with the fact that in your service with the legions of K17, you may don the cloak of invisibility. Now, I want to say something here. It's nice to have the awareness that one can call on the cloak of invisibility. But if you don't practice it, and if you don't have this thing ready to go, when you really need it, you will not have it. It will not be practical to you. I remember when the war was going on in Yugoslavia, if you remember, a few years ago. And one of our fighter jets, one of the very brand new ones that they couldn't very well pick up on radar, when it was hit and it went down, the pilot landed in behind the forces, the negative forces, evil forces. And he got out of the plane. He was able to get out and go into a woods, at which time the enemy came with hunting dogs, and they were going to try to capture him. And they spent much time in the area with their hunting dogs. And this man was there, but they could not find him. And one has to say, well, wonder how he can do that. How could he be there and hunting dogs smelling his smell, his vibration and so on? How did he do that? I don't know for sure how he did it, but this is what we're talking about here. There are times when you don't want to be seen. There was a little book that I would like to refer to. It's called St. Francis of Paoli. This is a very interesting book about a person who was born and dedicated immediately to the church and to the Spirit, and he was just one of those persons who could just do almost anything. He could hold a hot coal in his hands; it wouldn't hurt anything, and so on. And at one point, as I remember the story, the country he was in was going to be invaded by Spain. Supposedly they had already left in their ships, and they were going to come and attack. And so the king requested that his soldiers go and bring Saint Francis of Paoli to him. Well, the soldiers came to the monastery where he was, and what he was in the chapel, but they searched everywhere, including the chapel. They were in and out of the chapel, and they said, "Where is this man? We have to bring him back." And the brothers said, "Well, he's in the chapel praying." So they went back to the chapel. They were not able to see him, but sure enough, there he was in prayer in the chapel. And as we begin to see this in reality, we need to be practicing it so that we can call for the ring pass not. We can call for the invisibility around us, this cloak of invisibility. We need to be making it so common within ourselves that we can call for it just like that, and it happens. This is what I'm concerned about. Yeah, we know about the angels. We know about these techniques, and yet we are so busy that we are not masters of it. We don't become the very master that we are supposed to be. He said the cloak of invisibility is a force field that can actually render you invisible as you walk the dangerous passages and along the highways in the service of the brotherhood. But I ask you to remember, when you desire to be seen and to make the contact with souls of light, to request your Christ self that the cloak of invisibility be removed. And then he tells a story which we were also told when we were on staff. The messengers had an experience over which the masters have chuckled a number of times. And he says, and as they walked together to a hotel in Colorado Springs, they donned the cloak of invisibility so as to remain aloof from the large crowds of people that were gathered there. They entered the restaurant, sat down, and waited to be served. And they waited. And they signaled the waiters, who ran by madly, not even noticing them at all. After about an hour of this, it suddenly occurred to them that they were wearing the cloak of invisibility. Quickly removing the cloak, they found that the maitre d' saw that they had not been served and quickly came to their service. And so we want to understand it has a responsibility with it. If you're going to put on the cloak, you have to remember to take it off, or you will not be able to relate to people. He said, and so this one experience, which you must realize might also happen to you. And then just when you are thinking that you are a lighthouse brimming with light, and that surely all children of the light should recognize you and see you and come to ask you, what is that light that you are carrying, and how can I follow that light? Just remember that you will not be seen at all if you are wearing the cloak. But also remember that even without the cloak, mankind do not always recognize the light. They do not recognize the sparkle of the eye, the purity and the love, the devotion which we behold upon your countenances. And therefore it is absolutely necessary that you give the first word of greeting, that you salute those who may send into that we may send into your presence, and not wait for them to remark how wonderful you look, or where you must be coming from, or what place of such great light. It is often a tragic thing that students will mingle among crowds in department stores, in public transportations, and seated right next to them by an act of incalculable effort on our part is another student of light whom we desire that we should make contact through the student with the ascendant hierarchy. And I've often sensed that myself. You get on an airplane, you sit down, and you make yourself invisible, so to speak. You don't want to get into an involvement with people, and so you sort of put your cloak around you, and the person next to you, you don't even give them a good morning or anything like that. You just sort of keep to yourself. And here, this might be the person that they have worked very, very hard to get them in that seat, so that you can introduce them to the light. These are the things which you and I, as parts of this whole reason for being upon the earth at this time, this is what we have to understand. Therefore, it is very, very important that you do not wait for them to remark how wonderful you look and where you must be coming from and so on. It's by an act of incalculable effort on the master's part, they have brought these people for you to open that door. And then we find that our student decides to read a book, not to talk, to go into the silence, to meditate. And I have to say, I have been guilty of that, as probably as you have. And thus the opportunity is lost, and our legions must look again to see how they will draw that individual who has no contact with hierarchy whatsoever, once again into the presence of one of our students, hoping against hope that he will open his mouth and speak, perhaps to say, "How are you today? Do you believe in re-embodiment?" There are some among you who fear not what you say. And sometimes you put the Ascended Masters in a most embarrassing situation by your remarks. Others of you have developed a policy of saying nothing, like the little monkeys with their speak no evil, see no evil, hear no evil, and I might add, think no evil. And thus we have two types of chelas to contend with. I would say that when in embodiment, there came a time on the path when I came to the conclusion that I no longer cared what anybody thought of what I said or did, as long as I spoke the truth. And thus I have noticed in recent years that some of you have become more bold. You have feared not to be called crackpot or kook or any other name for the sake of the light. And by the way, now they're calling you any kind of names, anything to wreck your embodiment. And I say it is a wise decision for you. Never know when you might be that you might extend the cup of knowledge, of hierarchy, to one who has been searching, not for one, but for many embodiments. And so, precious hearts, I came to the conclusion that mankind would speak ill of me, would gossip about me, would revile me, whether I was silent or whether I was outspoken. And this is true today. And thus I chose the path of outspokenness when I was guided to speak. And I think that's a qualifying part there. Just make sure the Master is speaking through you when you make these comments. And sometimes I spoke when not guided, desiring rather to make a mistake of extra effort than to have on my record a sin of omission. I once worked with a fellow who had a pretty good idea. He said, "Carl, you need to understand, when I speak to a group of people, I know that 50% of them will understand what I'm saying spiritually. 25% of them will have some big questions and would like to know more. And 25% of them, you won't change no matter what you say." And so when I see this, I understand I will be one with 75% of this by the time we're done with the talking. And this is a really good way of thinking, that you will find many, many people who can identify right away with you. And that's the ones the Master is trying to get to you. Now, there are definite times, he says, as you will learn from my legions, when it is important to walk in earth incognito. When you realize that you are in the camp of the enemy, and you are there to gather information and to learn what you can learn for the sake of the light, then you remain in the folds of the cloak of invisibility, and your very conscience and soul tell you that silence is golden, that discretion is the better part of valor. I would also speak to you of the ring pass not, for in situations of danger, it is an added protection, sealing your tube of light in an armor that is like the bars that are placed on automobiles, so that when they roll in their testing, they roll on the bars. This means that when you are in situations and you have to roll with the punches and with the knocks, there is a ring pass knot that is an extra protection that seals you from the intrusion of violence against your physical body. and from the penetration of poisons, rays, and all manner of sophisticated weapons that are used against the legions of the cosmic service in embodiment. The ring passed not. He said, therefore, I urge you to call for the ring passed not, to keep it about you. This is a suggestion now. When you wake up in the morning, before you really get started, call for the ring passed not. After you get yourself attuned in and so on, call for the ring passed not, and keep it there all day. It will be protection, for it will insulate you from the mass consciousness, and it will also serve as an electrode to intensify the action of the all-seeing eye of God, so that you may perceive these threats and dangers that they are sent against your lives as you ask to preserve the honor and the integrity of our flame. We stand for the protection of freedom in every land, and we are not partial to any nation as such, but we are partial to the sons and daughters of God, who keep the flame in every nation upon earth. And we watch as the infiltration of the dark ones is carried on, as the international spy activity and then intrigue from the capitals of those nations who seek to dominate the world with their darkness, their totalitarianism, and their tyranny that is spread abroad solely in the attempt to snuff out the Christ light. And this is happening very, very much right now in the United States of America. And you need to be aware, and you need to be conscious, and you need to be able to see when you read the news, be able to decipher out where this is happening. For we are coming to a very high peak of the Battle of Armageddon, and you and I both will be our part of that. America must be protected as the last stronghold of opportunity and freedom. For I tell you, it is the nature of the force fields and the structure of hierarchy, the retreats of the brotherhood, that if this nation, this landed area, should fall into the hands of the dark ones, they would have the greatest concentration of light energy in their use to then misqualify and to use against all peoples and nations everywhere to subjugate them to the tyranny of darkness. Do you understand then, when forces of darkness capture a nation or a people, it is the light that they are interested in. And when they raise their banner of the Black Brotherhood over that nation, and this takes place in the astral plane, when the conquering of every nation by the forces of Lucifer, then by that act they have the authority to claim all energies of the nation, of its resources, and its people for darkness. Thus, the conquest of Europe by the black magicians that used Adolf Hitler in a mass mania of pride, of the super race in the conquest of nation after nation, these forces used people that were indeed children of light mixed with the children of darkness. But by the hypnosis of that leader, Der Führer, there was brought to pass the capturing not only of nations, but of energies that were intended to be used for the bringing down of the stronghold of light in America. And I tell you, if it had not been for the mission of Saint Germain, of Godfrey, and Lotus during that period, this nation would have fallen into the hands of the black magicians by the very energy spirals that they were increasing by their conquest each day. And these are the forces that you and I are facing every day of our lives right now. So, precious hearts, with the ascended hierarchy, while the ascended hierarchy does not advocate war. It advocates self-defense at all levels. If you can focus the light in your body and in your hands, that will reverse the bullets of the dark ones when they attack. Then I say to you, you have no need to be equipped with conventional armor and conventional weapons. But until you reach that attainment, you have the karmic responsibility to preserve your life. Therefore, to allow yourself to be killed when you are a light bearer, when you are entrusted with the fate of an entire civilization, and indeed a karmic penalty, and you will have to return to that place in time and space to defend that freedom. Some years ago, I heard that in Africa a very great miracle happened. I think it was in Nigeria, when the government of the Nigerian people were taken over by a dark force. The ones at the head of that government were all put in prison. Now, one of those was a keeper of the flame. And when he went to prison, the only thing he had to do was just sit and decree. And so he used the violet flame, the decrees, the heart, head, and hand decrees. And he did it by the hour. That's all he had to do, so that's what he did. He just did the decrees, And one day they come in and took all of them out and put them out in front of a firing squad. And the head of the firing squad said, "Ready, aim, fire." And all of them dropped except this keeper of the flame. He was still standing there, to the amazement of everybody. And so immediately the head man said, "Again, ready, aim, fire," and all of the firing squad shot at him. And nothing happened. It was strange. So he said to him, the head of the firing squad said, "Who are you and what's going on here?" He said, "Sir, if you'd like to know what's going on, come to my church on Sunday morning and we'll talk about this." The last I heard about this of this man was that he was sent as the ambassador to another country. How did he do this? I had a chance to talk later with the bishop in the area, and I said to him, "Tell me about this miracle. Tell me about what happened, really. What was his experience?" He said, as he stood there, he said, "It's as if you had a whole bunch of pieces of aluminum foil dropped from an airplane, and in the sunlight it was all flashes of light, and this is what was all around him, and the bullet stopped before it came to him personally." Now, these are the miracles that are happening today by those people who are attuning themselves. And this is what we want to begin to understand, that it is possible when you move up into this higher consciousness to be able to move in this way. And so I say to you, he says, those of you who have considered non-resistance to violence, think well. For to allow the hordes of darkness to take command of this planet and to turn it over to a one-world government under Lucifer, to allow this to take place when you know better, is fraught with grave consequences. Thus, when you, by conscience, make the choice of being a conscientious objector, you have the support of hierarchy in many cases. For some of you are at that point in evolution where service, civilian service, or service for those who are fighting to correct proper move, you have this point of evolution. But there are others are required by karmic law to be in the front lines of battle, and therefore each case has to be individual. It isn't like everybody should bow down and let it happen. We have to begin to see that if we're going to have the divine light there, we have to fight for it. All is not perfect on earth, he says. And therefore, can we offer perfect solutions? Can we write down then the solution to this problem? Can we set it forth with all of the karmic involvements and entanglements and the karma that has been created century after century as the Luciferians have imposed their darkness upon the sons of light, who have had to go forth to do their bidding on the battlefields of light? I say to you then, be prepared by the byword of the legions of K17. Your constitution gives you the divine right to bear arms. You must understand that the bearing of arms does not necessitate the use of arms. But you never know when you have to defend liberty, even against such things as wild beasts of prey and animals that would attack your family and your children in the wilderness. Sometimes the use of arms, the sound of arms, the sound of fire will be all that is required to defend the citadel of freedom and a place prepared in the wilderness. And sometimes the ultimate sacrifice might be necessary when you must choose between the company of light bearers and their safety, and the lives of those who are committed to darkness. When faced with that decision, I trust in Almighty God that you will see clearly, by the power of the all-seeing eye, the correct move to take. For precious hearts, we cannot anticipate every eventuality that you will encounter. And thus we say, be the best prepared company of servers upon earth. And then we will provide the way of escape whereby you can live up to your highest ideals and your highest desires for all life everywhere. Harmlessness is the byword of the legions of K17. And yet they are experts in karate and judo, for that is the ancient science taught to the most consecrated of the brothers and sisters of our retreats in Asia, high in the Himalayas, high in the mountains of China and Tibet, where the hordes of darkness have overrun our focuses of light again and again, chasing out entire life waves of people such as the Dalai Lama and his followers, who have had to leave their homeland because of the hordes of darkness. This has been repeated over and over again in past ages. And thus the Brotherhood determined upon a policy of training their priests in self-defense, whereby they might overcome the enemy without doing him harm. This is indeed the highway of the action of fearlessness flame, of protections blue. And you will find that the reason that science is so successful is that in the use of Aikido, there are angels of light and legions of cosmic service, secret service, who assist those in embodiment and add momentum of their force and their weight to their energy through the priests of the sacred fire, so that they can handle numbers of individuals who may come and descend upon them suddenly in the night to tear down their precious shrines and statues and places consecrated to worship. You know, after reading this, I had to sit back and look at my own training in the past. And I've had to make some corrections within my own consciousness. And if I were young again, I would certainly become a master of Aikido or of judo or whatever. But at my age, all I can do is say, okay, tonight when I go to sleep, please take me to train me in these defense mechanisms. Because when I'm trained then those who are working with me can increase my energy and thought processes during that encounters. He said, therefore, precious hearts, training in self-defense is an automatic training that you receive when you enlist in the service of K-17's legions. And I assure you that where there is time and where there is a willing Chela, we give the law of concentration of energy within the chakras that is able to repel all enemies and which can be used to anticipate danger and to remove oneself and one's family with the cloak of invisibility from many situations that would otherwise be met by lesser involved souls with confrontation, combat, and bloodshed. I hope we are listening to this. I hope we are getting the picture within ourselves. He said, thus hierarchy meets the need of the evolving consciousness where it is. Hierarchy brings food to those who are hungry. Do you think that hierarchy will bring to those who eat meat a cornucopia of vegetarian food? I tell you, no. Where there is hunger on Thanksgiving, we have used gentle souls in the churches of the world to bring turkey and ham to those life streams who are accustomed to this fare. And where our chelas have been gathered on the mountainsides praying for that nourishment of higher form, we have also provided that need and met their need at the level of their consciousness. And as the children of Israel received manna from heaven as they crossed the Sinai desert, so I say to you, where your consciousness is, so will the need be met in all ways. Remember that. Remember that. My one caution to you is this: to know where your consciousness is. Excuse me. You must know where you are, what you are, how much light you have anchored in your being, and therefore what recourse you have for action and for salvation. To walk with your head in the air, in the pie in the sky consciousness, and to say, if God wants me to live, he will see that I live. And then not be willing to take the fork and knife and lift the food to your mouth is folly indeed. If you're willing to go shopping in your grocery stores to purchase food for your families, if you're willing to cook dinner and present it on your table before your children, do you suddenly then reverse the process and make no preparation for survival? Do you not have the record in the Old Testament of the prophecy of the years of famine that came to those who were entrusted with the revelations of hierarchy? And have you not seen how, because the grains were added to the storehouse of the king, so the children of Israel had food during the years of famine? If you then perceive, because of economic conditions and conditions in nature, that there is a possibility of the shortage of food, do you sit in your house and say, if God wants me to eat, he will feed me? Or do you go out and make provision and bring into the storehouse of your being those things which will be required for the little ones entrusted to your care? So you will see by our dictation this night that the legions of K-17 are most practical. And if you will espouse the practicality of the mother flame, you will never be found wanting or without the natural resources that you require in time of need. The manifestation of the free-flowing waters of the well at Mother's Retreat is an example of the practicality of hierarchy that has rubbed off into the practicality of the life of our messenger through the gentle hand of her own mother in this embodiment. You too have learned practicality from your mothers and fathers. Do not cast it to the winds. Make provision, and then you will find that when the hosts of light have the greatest need for you to function in physical bodies, your physical bodies will be strong and well and clothed upon and warm. And thus you will not be worrying about what you will put on, what you will eat, what you will drink. For by your foresight, through the all-seeing eye of God, you will have this in your keeping, and you will be able to think about the souls upon the planet who have not made these provisions, who have not made the provision of the soul for the protection of soul. And therefore, you will be able to stand fast to make the invocations that they too might be clothed upon and be nourished through the hand of God working through the hand of man. On earth, God's work is truly your own, as the late President Kennedy said. And so on earth, God's work is also the work of the legions of K-17, who have dedicated themselves to be those members of hierarchy who are the closest to the physical octave and its physical vibration. And some of you know that it has been said of me that I make more physical appearances in the halls of government and among the leaders of nations than any other ascended master. This is because of the dispensation of the legions of the cosmic service, secret service, to work so close to mankind that they actually feel tangibly our presence. And thus in times of danger, their fears are alloyed because they feel the presence of that heavenly help that is always forthcoming when there is dedication to the honor flame. When there is dedication to the honor flame. We march with the legions of the ray of light. We carry the fearlessness flame, and thus we are one. And heaven is on the move, and we are moving with you. And we are anchoring this light, this night, a certain momentum of our service, that you might have the joy and the happiness, as well as the determined and stern in their resolve, and determined to carry forth the light, to march with the legions of light. I thank you for your gentle ears, for your gentle hearts, your patience in receiving all that we have desired to bring to you this night. We salute you, and we do not take our leave of you, for we shall remain with you as long as you desire our assistance. So we give thanks to K-17 for these vital instructions in this hour of Armageddon. I don't know about you, but I call forth thousands of angels every day to minister to every member of the American society, every citizen in America. I call for the lifting of the light of every person, and especially those of the light, that they might see through the darkness that is spread to keep America in bondage. Join with me as we join with K-17 in the calling forth the results or the answers to the problems in this hour. See yourself in the army of the cosmic secret service. See yourself as and be responsible for who you really are in this time of need. To this end, we dedicate ourselves to the cause of K-17 and the Cosmic Secret Service, and we give thanks for this apropos message in this hour.